So we'll start off, because everybody has these different definitions of cloud. Like we hear as a service, we hear weather. My wife always says fluffy or nice paycheck from selling nothing. Selling clouds. Always wonders about that, why she went to school. But we're going to start off with a couple of different definitions. The first one I'm going to bring up is the NIST definition for cloud, National Institute for Standards and Technology. It's a definition that gets tossed around a lot here. You'll read about it a lot when you hear people refer to the NIST definition. I think they've done a pretty good job. They're in version like 293 of their definition now. But this is their current definition. And I've highlighted some keywords that don't appear very well on this horrible projector that we have today. The first one up is this convenient on-demand network access, meaning we need to be able to get to these resources basically over the network, and not some proprietary network, not over some Uber VPN or anything like that, but just over the network. Kind of like in the last session we mentioned Dropbox, right? Dropbox, I just plug in, I just get onto it, it's magic, right? We also need a shared pool of resources. So someone asked me on the other, coming out of the other session just a minute ago, hey, I have a person that's doing disaster recovery up to a hosting provider. Is that cloud? So that's managed hosting. It's typically dedicated to a particular customer. That's not really cloud, right? Good business, still makes a lot of money, but it's not really a cloud business. For cloud, we're going to need a shared pool of resources, right, to get to that economics that we want. So you can still do disaster recovery to a cloud. There are cloud providers that offer disaster recovery with shared pools of resources that aren't dedicated to a particular customer. That's fine. But for the definitions here, we need a shared pool of resources. You're going to see that come up again. They also say it needs to be able to be rapidly provisioned. Easy enough, right? Go swipe your credit card, provision it. But also rapidly released. This is the tricky part. When I get into the VMware definition in a minute, you'll see sort of a recurrence of this with a slight twist. And then I also need to be able to have minimal management effort in order to run this thing. If I'm having to call you up and say, hey, I want cloud, all right, hey, he wants cloud. 50 people behind the scenes go and run and manipulate things and do all these different sort of pseudo-automated types of activities, and you're up in a couple of days or maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks, that's not cloud, right? We want to be able to have minimal management effort in order to provision and release these resources. It's another key tenet of cloud. So if you're thinking about cloud, this is a good definition. This is the NIST cloud, right? So we have all these things, convenient network access, right? Be able to get to it when I want to it, be able to rapidly provision and rapidly release when I want to it, go in and out when I want to, and I don't have to really talk to anybody. So this is what I call the crybaby cloud, right? I want my cloud, I want it now, and I want it my way. That's the NIST definition. If I'm too loud with this microphone, I'm sorry. The guy over here asked to record this, so I get to record all my ranting and raving. So the next definition up is the VMware definition, which interestingly enough, for those keeping score, did come out well before the NIST definition. Go VMware. So we have the same thing. We want lightweight entry to the cloud, but also lightweight exit to the cloud. Has anybody here used Amazon or any other type of cloud? Pretty easy to get in, right? You just click on it, swipe credit card, boom, I have an instance. How easy was it to get that instance back out into your private data center? Not so easy, right? Even from a lot of the other provision clouds outside of Amazon. I pick on them because they were first to market, so first to market, you're leading the way, you sort of get hit first. It's just rule. But lightweight entry, but we also want lightweight exit. I'm going to talk to you about how this works here in a little bit. We've got consumption-based pricing, which everybody knows, right? You pay for what you use. Internet protocols, so again, over the standard network. Elastic, meaning be able to grow up and shrink down. And again, here's a shared infrastructure word. So that's the VMware definition. Very similar to NIST is kind of what we believe. I believe the key one here is sort of that lightweight entry and exit that I'm going to tag on in a little bit. And there's a third definition that I'm going to leave you with before we start diving into some of this cloud infrastructure stuff. And it is by far and away the most popular definition that you'll read. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. It's the Mike D definition for cloud. Right? The Mike D definition for cloud goes something like this. I want to be able to access my data, but I want to be able to access it anywhere that I am. I travel a lot, right? A whole lot. So anywhere that I am. If I'm here, I want to be able to access my expense system, which happens to be out in Palo Alto, California, right? But if I'm in Asia, I also want to be able to access that same expense system with the same speed, the same SLA, the same ability to do my expenses. If I happen to be in Copenhagen the next day, I want to be able to access it there at the same time. So I want to be able to access my data anywhere that I happen to be. Again, I don't want to care about where my data is, I just want to be able to access it. I want to be able to access it anytime. I'm on a flight here in about an hour and 40 minutes, right? I want to be able to access that on the flight on the way home. Thankfully, Delta has internet service, but if Delta didn't have internet service, if it was one of the old crappy Northwest planes that they bought, right, without internet service, then I want to be able to access it while I'm there. So online, offline, train, plane, automobile, it doesn't matter where I happen to be. And then the third thing is I want to be able to access this using any device, anything that I have. Whether it happen to be my iPhone, a BlackBerry, my wife's PC, my Mac, whatever it happens to be, I want to be able to still be able to access that data in the same manner, in the same rich interface, the same ability to consume that data. So anywhere, anytime, anything access to data, sort of the AAA of cloud. And that brings us back to what I was talking about sort of in the last session. Cloud is all about users accessing their data. This big fluffy thing that's in the middle, the cloud, they don't want to have to care about what's in the middle of that, right? So that's your definition for cloud, the Mike D definition. I don't care. Those that were in the panel session, this is a repeat. For those of you that are new, welcome to the I don't care pitch. So I don't want to have to care about an end user being able to access that data. Now for those that are in the room here, you're like, wow, you're smoking crack, and you talk fast for a southern boy. You talk like a New Yorker. I guess I don't know why that is. But this I don't care, I do care about what's in the middle of that thing. I have to care about security. I have to care about availability for that. I have to care about how this is delivered to the end user. But what point I want to get across here is as you're worrying about those things, and as you're thinking about how to deliver cloud services to your users, to your end consumers, think about this. They don't want to have to care about what you're caring about. They just want to be able to access their data at the end of the day. So anything you can do to add value to your cloud, right, to where they don't have to care, the end consumer doesn't have to care about what's in the middle, you're building a good cloud. You're building a valuable cloud. Anything you put in the infrastructure to where you have to care about it, or you have to take downtimes during certain parts of the day, or you have to restructure it at some point in the future, you're subtracting from cloud. You're not building a good cloud. You might be building a good enterprise architecture, but you're not really building a good cloud infrastructure, right? So keep that in the back of your mind, this I don't care approach. Now let's get into the meat of this presentation. Talk to you about the definition of cloud and everything like that that's out there. I'm going to very briefly bring up sort of the stacks of cloud, and then we're going to get into some live demos of what's really real and what's really working here in the cloud. So first, the stacks of cloud. A lot of you probably are familiar with this. We start down at the bottom with infrastructure. So infrastructure is a service. These are the people selling you servers or virtual machines on demand, right? Terramarks, Amazons, FlexiScales, there's all sorts of people, AT&Ts, Verizons, all these guys are in the game now, selling you sort of VMs on demand. Some of them offer other services with those VMs, but by and large, the infrastructure as a service is infrastructure play. Server on demand, networking on demand, load balancing as a service on demand. Then you have sort of this platform as a service, or development. These are the people that say, do you really care about the operating system and about a server? Maybe all you really care about, right, is developing your application and getting that to market. So what I'm going to give you is a platform. I'm going to give you a Java platform. So you can write your code, put it straight into the cloud, and then your code just runs. You don't have to worry about installing an OS. You don't have to worry about building a server. I worry about all the rest of that stuff. You just worry about your code. So that's the platform as a service space. And they have, Google App Engines in here, Salesforce, Microsoft with Azure, if any of you are familiar with that. A lot of people in the platform as a service play too. Lastly, you have people in what we call the software as a service play, or this application space. These are people who say, I really don't care about the operating system and the application, or I don't really care about the operating system. I don't really care about the application. There's no real application that differentiates me. I differentiate me. It's the people that differentiate my business. I just need software to run that business. I just need some Office applications, so I can go out to Google or Microsoft and get that. Or, I just need CRM. I can go to Salesforce and get that. So I don't have to care about backing up the application or upgrading the application or doing any of that. Software as a service is my play. So those are the three large stacks. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on in cloud now, like database as a service and some other things, desktop as a service that's coming. But by and large, these are the three stacks I'm going to talk about today. You can deploy these in both a private manner, meaning inside of your data center, traditional IT type of thing, or publicly, out there on the web. Anybody using public cloud resources today? Raise a hand. Shout out. Woo! There's like 4 of you in here. The rest of you, get on the bandwagon and start using some public cloud resources. So there's private and public cloud resources. Now the nice thing about this is VMware has done a lot of acquisitions and a lot of building over the course of the last 3 years in this space. So now the infrastructure as a service, anytime you hear the word vCloud, primarily that means it's at the infrastructure as a service layer. We have vCloud Express, we have vCloud Data Center, we have vCloud Director, all these vCloudish type of things, but they're primarily at the infrastructure as a service layer. The platform as a service layer is starting to get a little crowded for us, frankly. We've got VMforce, which is our partnership with Salesforce.com. We've got Spring Source Tool Suite. We've got Cloud Foundry, which just launched last week. So a lot of things going on there. And the last one is the application software as a service. We've got Zimbra, which you'll see what that means, software as a service in a little bit. RabbitMQ you can get as a service off the web. We just bought SlideRocket last week, which is a sort of presentation thing. I was going to use SlideRocket today, but it's a cloud-based service. And unfortunately, we really don't have crap for internet access here. Boo on the Charlotte Convention Center. It costs like $40,000 or something stupid to get wireless. So SlideRocket I would be using today, but boo-hoo for the $40,000. I didn't have that in my pocket. We will now go and use SlideRocket instead next time. Yes, that's on film. Sorry, Charlotte. So I want to introduce you to a little bit of a story here, a little bit of context.
Is that an MCI t-shirt? Oh my God. Is that an MCI t-shirt?
Yeah, it is an MCI t-shirt. Long live and tell how old this picture was. That's back when I didn't have hair. I have hair now. Some of you got that. So I want to introduce you to Joe, the IT guy. So this is Joe. Joe's like pretty much the rest of us, right? He doesn't like to be bothered by IT, just likes to collect a paycheck and then go out and play golf all day long. So Joe's a great guy. He kind of hangs around, doesn't really like to be bothered. Like I said, Joe has one problem in his entire life. I wish we all just had one problem, but Joe is lucky enough to have just one problem in his entire life. And that is Frank, the developer, right? Frank, the developer, sits around and he slings code all day long. He's like, I'm the programmer. I am the ruler of the universe. It's not the IT guy, not the infrastructure guy. No, Gene, this is not an approved marketing deck. So this is the application guy. So I want to tell you the history of sort of Joe and Frank and how they're using cloud and why cloud came about in their infrastructure. The reason I said Joe has a problem is because Frank always comes, he says, hey, can you make me a Windows server? Can you make me a Windows server? Can you make me a Windows server? It sounds like a little dog baking a biscuit or something, right? And we get this all the time in IT. And this is what became cloud, right? They said, hey, we can build Windows servers faster. We can build Linux servers faster, right? Sort of on demand, give them little treats. They just go up and hit the bell, you know, and it rings and the food comes down. So here's Frank, here's Joe. Can you make me another Windows server? The problem with this is Joe goes out and he's like, goodness gracious, now I gotta buy a server. That's gonna be 8 months getting through purchasing. Then I gotta build my server, right? That's gonna be another little bit longer. Then I've got to install the operating system, patch the operating system, install the applications, back this thing up, provide disaster recovery, provide security audits, blah, 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 all the way down the road, right? We all know this story. We live and breathe this story every single day. Sort of the bane of our existence sometimes. So this is a problem. Now, Joe's a smart guy. Joe calls up Nick, right? The VMware slinger, says, Nick, I need a solution for this. Nick says, I'm happy to oblige. I need a new car. You can buy this from me, right? Thank you, Nick, for attending. So he goes out and sells them Vcloud Request Manager. So this is sort of an automated way of requesting services and providing these services. Infrastructure as a service services. Has anybody in here heard of Vcloud Request Manager? A little bit. So basically the history of this, we bought from EMC a company called Infra, and they had something called Service Manager. And Service Manager basically is a portal and automation framework. We took it and we built Request Manager on top of this Service Manager framework. So it came through sort of an acquisition in the past 12 months. But what's really cool about this is Frank, the developer, goes into this little web application. He logs in with his Active Directory credentials, and he says, okay, I want a Windows server. I'm going to need it for this Alpha Web Server project that I'm doing. Here's my sort of configuration for it. I need it until this particular time, and I need to build it in this particular data center. So easy enough for Frank to do. He clicks on this, clicks next. Joe, who happens to not be in his office today, Joe happens to be out on the golf course. He gets it on his little BlackBerry and says, hey, here's a request. It's, this is requested by Victor Martinez. I know I'm using weird screenshots, but it's Frank's pseudonym. And then he goes out and he says, okay, to approve this, just click here or reply to this message. So straight from his email, he can say, yep, that looks good, reply, next tee shot. Boom, he's off and running. Doesn't really have to worry about it. The whole buy, build, everything process that's gone down, that's really of no strategic value for IT to be dealing with on a daily basis. All that's approved, it goes through this huge workflow process, right? It says manager's approved, creates a V app, it allocates. It says, hey, I can go ahead and roll out, keep track of your licensing, your Microsoft licensing, or whatever happens to be going through there. Update the V app, blah, blah, blah. Everything's done. Notify Joe. At the end, or notify Frank. At the end of that, Frank gets a server. But he's like, holy crap, this is big, mean server. I have no idea what to do with this server. Remember, Frank is a developer. He looks at this server thing, he's like, that thing looks like it's about to eat me for lunch. I have no idea if this is a good marketing ad or not. So he comes back, and Frank says, what in the world? How do I install my application on this thing? How do I set up networking? I'm not a networking guy, I'm a programmer, right? Frank, on a daily basis, lives in something that looks like this. He knows how to sling code. Code is his life, code is all he does. This is good. We need Franks in the world, right? We need Joes in the world. So Frank says, can you give me something like this, where I can just go and sling my code and then deploy it, right? Without having to worry about how to install my application. This is where we go from infrastructure as a service up into platform as a service. This is the value to Frank. So luckily for Frank, we launched something called Cloud Foundry earlier last week, right? Cloud Foundry is really cool. It's built with the Spring framework, so it works with pretty much any Java application. But guess what? Cloud Foundry is even better. If you buy now, we'll throw in 2 Cloud Foundries for the price of $19.95. It actually does Rails as well, and Node.js, and soon coming Ruby and some other things, right? So we can do a lot of different programming frameworks on top of this, and yes, we'll continue to add those. We also have stuff like data services, so if he needs a database, he can plug into a database. Cloud Foundry takes care of that automatically, right? If he needs a message service, Cloud Foundry takes care of that automatically. All he has to do is write his code, deploy his code, and boom, you're off and running. Now, who wants to see a demo of this? Who wants to see me write a Java application? Nick especially, he's like, ha 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 ha, you programming? Oh, I've got to see this. So here's our good little demo, and here's where the kicker is. This is not going to be a live demo, unfortunately. Long boo. Boo. I know. I prayed to the demo gods, made the sacrifice last night, my poor little dog, and still it's not going to work. So what I'm going to do instead is I recorded a demo for you, especially last night. So it's pseudo-live, it's somewhat delayed, broadcast delayed. So here we are, we're in my little programming environment. I'm going to create myself a new cloud project. Hopefully you can see me typing along. So this is just creating a new Spring framework. Anybody in here developer? Nobody? Oh, that should be fun. So what you do is you basically just give the project some name. You give it some Java scope down here. You click finish, and it goes off and it's going to build you. So it's building a little workspace. It's going to build you a Java application. So I have my new demo time Java application here. I promise to post a high definition video version of this. I know it's probably crappy in the back of the room, you can't see half of this stuff. But there is Java code, for those of you that have never written Java before. And here's all your Java classes and everything that goes along with it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my new little Java application that I just built with Spring, and I'm going to run it. I'm going to run it on my local TC server. So this is actually was running on my laptop. Anybody that wants to come and see it running later, I can run it on my laptop. We're going to restart the server, so it's going to take a little bit of time, because I had another instance of this running before, so I sort of semi-nuked my local instance. So this is going to spew off a bunch of different stuff. It'll restart the Tomcat server that's on my local laptop. And this is just a very simple Java application. For any of you that haven't used Spring, Spring is a great thing, because it builds a lot of stuff behind you for what you need to do. So it's going to build my entire app instance and what does all the key logic and everything, and it'll display a web page for me at the end of this. This is our good old Hello World application. Anybody remember writing Hello World in computer science? Yeah, a lot of people did, right? You're like, oh, look, I got to say Hello World. This is awesome. And then you got all excited, now you're in IT, and you're like, God, I'm bald later, I don't have any money, what the heck's going on? Why did I get really excited about this? But there's Hello World. It's running on my local host. This is sort of in the web browser. But now, oops, I am going to make that back up. Uh-oh. Can't make that back up. Darn it. How do you get this to control? Anybody a Keynote wizard? Okay, I'll tell you another little story while we're waiting this fast forward along. So, what you'll see down here, so it doesn't go so fast, there's a little Cloud Foundry instance down here. So this is my Spring Source TC server that's running on the local instance. This is our Cloud Foundry instance. So you can see http://api.cloudfoundry.com. So we just load this instance in. And what this does is it allows us now to drag our code that we have, this demo time application, and drop it straight onto that Cloud Foundry instance. What it's going to do is it's going to copy my jar application, basically my Java application, up to Cloud Foundry. Cloud Foundry is going to say, okay, I see you need a Java instance, I see you need an application instance, and this particular MVC application I built actually talks to a database. You'll see all this data nucleus stuff flowing through behind here that says that I'm talking to a database, I'm plugged into a database somehow. So you need a database instance. What Cloud Foundry does is it builds all that stuff for me, deploys my Java code on there, and then runs it. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to install the application. I didn't have to download the latest version of Tomcat and get that running. I didn't have to download Java and get that running. I didn't have to do any of that stuff behind the scenes. For any of you that deployed a web server, that's a rather complex environment to get all that up and running and get the database server up and running and get all that linked together. It's a rather complex environment. What I'm doing is actually building that in like 2 seconds or less when I drag this to Cloud Foundry. So just a second, voila, we'll have our Hello Cloud back up again. Voila. And now, you'll see me go over here and grab this demo time application and drag it down to my Cloud Foundry thing. Drag, drop. This is why I don't like recorded demos because it flows a little weird. I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to say start. I'm going to name it. So here's my demo time. I'm going to put demo time-micd just so I remember what it is. I click next. It's going to give me, what's my URL. I'm going to put demotime-micd.cloudfoundry.com. So it's going to take care of all the DNS, all the IP registration. All that's handled for me automatically behind the scenes in Cloud Foundry. Didn't have to call anybody for that, didn't have to set anything up, any of that. I just say, okay, here's my application, it's launched. I go ahead and paste it into my browser window here at this point in time. Boom, there's my Hello World application. Everybody clap. I wrote a shout out. Very good, very good. Thank you. We'll be here all week. So that's our little Java application. That's the Power Platform as a Service. This will run with pretty much every Java application you have inside of your environment. Anybody have a Java app in their environment? Everybody should raise their hands because I promise you have a Java app in your environment somewhere. Trust me, even the people that are like, no, we're pure Microsoft shops. You have a Java app in your environment somewhere. I will bet the farm on it. So that's nice if you wrote the application. But what happens if you didn't write the application, right? What happens if you needed an email server, for example? I'm not about to sit up here and write an email server for you. That's a much more complex environment, right? The good thing about this is we can go up the stack from platform as a service to software as a service now. And I can say, I need an email server, but again, I don't want to buy, an operating system and server and install that stuff and patch it just to get email up and running. I just need email, right? So build me an email service. The nice thing about this is we bought Zimbra a little while ago, which is a full-fledged collaboration suite. It does email and calendaring and file folder sharing and all this crazy stuff. Everything that Exchange does, except better, I believe, and cheaper. I should mention that. But here's Zimbra, right? So Zimbra is this great email service. We now made an appliance out of it. So, anybody in here install Exchange recently? Nobody. Nobody's an email server. Wow. So if you do install Exchange, it takes a darn long period of time. There's like 12 different roles, and you got to install all these servers and databases and all this crap, and get it all patched and running. It takes a long time. Normally, I would do a live demo of me installing an email server from scratch, getting an entire Exchange-like environment up and running with iPhone plugins, with BlackBerry plugins, full integration. What are you laughing about, Nick? Instead, I recorded it. And this is in real time, so sit back, relax. Everybody brought their popcorn, right? Don't worry, this video goes faster. You don't have to walk out yet. So here's my email server. What I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy this from a template, right? Well, it's not actually from a template. This is from a URL. Here's our Zimbra appliance. You can find it on zimbra.vmware.com, right? Or not zimbra.vmware.com, something out there, vmware.com, and look for Zimbra. Click accept is the thing. Anybody deployed a virtual appliance before? It's pretty easy. All this stuff's baked in, right? You just click next, 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 finish. I deploy it to my infrastructure. I click next. I give it an IP address. I click next. And keep on going and keep on going. And what you'll see behind the scenes is I end up answering a series of questions. My questions go like, what do you want the password to be? What do you want the IP address to be? And before too long, it'll actually auto-size it for me so I can see I have a trial license up here. Oh, this projector is just horrible. I can go mid-size or large-size environment, and it'll actually ratchet up the CPU and memory count and everything that it needs for that virtual appliance automatically. And when I'm done with all this, behind the scenes, I like live demos much better because I can click around faster. When I'm done with this all behind the scenes, I will actually get an email service, a fully functioning email service in 5 minutes or less. So I encourage you to go home and do this. It's free to do a trial. You just click, hey, I want a trial. It gives you this little trial URL that you just saw. Download it, install it. Hey, you have an email service up and running. Full on MTA, SMTP, everything that you would want to do. Has iPhone integration built in, has BlackBerry integration built in. This, again, is something that you can use as a partner or as a consumer inside of your environment. Works completely with Exchange, so you don't have to replace your Outlook clients, you don't have to replace your Exchange servers. Works side by side with all those different types of things. So it's completely seamless. Nick can attest to this, right? You've been at VMware, Gene can attest to this, right? We just did the whole Zimbra pilot migration. It worked flawlessly, didn't it? Works flawlessly. So here's my template deploying at this point in time. And after this starts deploying, I can actually go to our URL once it's done deploying. I configure my email service. You can see all of my email services running at this point in time. So here's my Zimbra collaboration suite. It's all web driven. It's actually a very, very beautiful thing, very scalable. Some of the largest email environments in the entire world are actually running on Zimbra. They just don't happen to know about it. It's sort of one of those things behind the scenes. So here it is. You can go to Zimbra administration, add a user, and then you'll pop into sort of the Zimbra. In the interest of time, I'll move along here though. So this is really cool. I can go ahead and tackle all those things where I'm building applications. I can use platform as a service, right? Use Cloud Foundry. We actually have instances of Cloud Foundry you can use inside. We can go ahead and build applications if we need to. We can download those as appliances. And now lastly, what do I do with all the rest of my applications, right? So these applications that I don't get software as a service, they're not packaged up, I don't write, I have a lot of those things running around. That's where we introduce VMware Vcloud Director, right? So this goes back down to the infrastructure as a service. This says, I want to build a cloud internally because I don't trust the public cloud, or I don't want to use the public cloud, or maybe I do want to use the public cloud, but I also want to use private cloud. And that's the beautiful thing about Cloud Director, is you can install this thing internally and build your own internal private cloud. You have public providers that are using it externally, and that allows something we call federation, the ability to move back and forth between these clouds. So this goes back to the easy in and easy out of the cloud. That's our belief at VMware, is that you should have choice where you run this stuff. You should have choice between cloud providers, so if you want to move from AT&T to a Verizon to a Time Warner to anybody else, you should have the ability to do that very flexibly, very easy. You should also have the ability to use this internally and externally. And the reason you can do that, and what gives you the ability to do that, is about 89% of the VMs that are out there today are VMware VMs. Got a question? Or
Is it a hybrid cloud or is it a private cloud?
Yeah, so hybrid cloud is another word for this. A lot of people call this hybrid cloud, absolutely. The ability to use private and public resources at the same time is a hybrid cloud. So we introduced something to make your life easier for this, because if you use a public cloud provider and you go out there, they usually have very pretty web interfaces, but your support staff is not trained on that web interface, right? You want to be able to see that public cloud resource using your existing tool set, right? Using your HP OpenView or your CA or your Tivoli or whatever it happens to be out there that you happen to be using. You want to be able to use that same tool set that you're trained on and that you've made an investment in to see and manage your private entities and see and manage your public entities at the same time, because you're used to that tooling, you have your alerts and your SLA set up in that tooling today. And that's why we introduced something called the Vcloud API, as well as something called the Vcloud Connector, which I'm about to show you today. Because this is what we live in to manage our VMs today, right? If you're at a VMware user group meeting, chances are you've seen the Virtual Center client. You use it sort of maybe on a daily basis probably. Out there, and that's what you use to manage a lot of your VMs today. So this vCenter, or your client, or vCenter Cloud Connector, VCC, actually plugs into this, and you can see all of your internal resources. So here's our vSphere resources, as well as all of your public cloud resources. And if you had multiple public cloud entities, you'd see them all lined up here. Like you might see AT&T, and you'd see Verizon, and you'd see Terramark, and you'd see Savvis. Well, a lot of those have merged now, but you'd see a lot of those cloud instances listed down there. And you'd be able to move stuff back and forth just by doing drag and drop. So time for the last demo that's here. What you'll see is my internal resources that I have inside of my environment. Is demo going? There we go. You see my internal resources I have inside of my environment and all my virtual machines that are listed here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up home and you'll see my vSphere Client Cloud plugin, VCC. I have a public cloud over in Strategic. This is actually in Europe right now. And I have my private internal resources. So this is in Cambridge that I happen to be happy. It's up on the East Coast in Boston. Now, I don't know if my little thing is stuck. Oh, there we go. We're flipping over to the Strategy Cloud. So here you see Cloud Director. This is the Vcloud Director. You can see all my applications I have listed inside of here. You can see that those same applications are listed over here. And now if you go back to infrastructure, if you've been paying attention, you'll see the same old applications I had in my infrastructure. This is running in my data center in Boston. Right? So I'm going to say copy from my data center in Boston. I want to push this up to the Strategy Cloud at this point in time. I'm going to give this app some name. I'm going to give this app some description at this point in time. If I can type faster. And then I'm going to go ahead and say I want to put it in this organization VDC. There's only one of those. I'm going to go ahead and put it in this catalog when I do copy it up there. And I'm going to attach it to a particular network. Now I could choose routed if I wanted to, which means I can get out to the internet. But you know what, I don't want to put that on routed. I'm going to put it on the internal network instead. I'm going to go ahead and deploy this into the target cloud, and I want to go ahead and power it on after I'm done. And I click OK. So this is using my existing tool set, vSphere, using the Client Cloud plugin. And now I can go ahead and I copy it up there. You can see it's queued. Now it's copying at this point in time. It'll export the OVF template, copy it up to the cloud at this point on the other side. This is over in Europe. And then power my application on. So easy to get into the cloud. You all would agree this is easy, right? We can right click and type in a few things. Pretty easy to get into the cloud. I don't have to go through some browser interface and all that type of stuff. I click refresh on the interface over here a couple of times. You'll see that my app is going to come back up. I think I called it demo time or something like that again. I click refresh one more time. Good job, man. You'll see there it is. Demo Mike D. It's creating my application. So I can see it both in the public cloud provider's interface as well as my private interface that I have. Now if I want to get this app back out, again, all I have to do is go to the Strategy interface in VCC and say copy to, copy back to my vSphere environment. It'll power it down and copy it back. Today we don't do live long distance vMotion. We're still trying to dig up Einstein and ask him about this theory of relativity to figure out how he beat the speed of light. But in the meantime, while we keep on digging around Boston trying to find this guy, apparently he's not in his grave, we can go ahead and power it off and move stuff back and forth in that respect. And you'll see a lot more Federation demos coming up at this year's VMworld, both in the US and in EMEA. So there we go, we've got our application. If we refresh this and waited for a minute, then Mike D will come back up. So there's our different personalities of cloud. We've got infrastructure as a service with our cloud connector, with our vCloud director, the vCloud API, all these things starting with vCloud, and then the vCloud request manager. I showed you some stuff with Cloud Foundry and Spring using platform as a service. I showed you real stuff happening today with Zimmer and the software as a service, and I would have shown you SlideRocket, how we had internet. But this is real. Other vendors will come and talk to you all day long. Microsoft will come and talk to you, Oracle will come and talk to you, Red Hat will come and talk to you, pretty much go down the list. They'll say, we have all this stuff with cloud. And you have to ask them, what's really here? What's really being used? What's really available for you to buy today? All the stuff available for you to buy and use today, right? It's been available for you to buy and use for a while now. So this is what's real in cloud. This is what's really working. Last thing I'll leave you with is, where do we start, right? Which one of these? Infrastructure, platform, software, which one of these things do we start with? Well, it's all about the business value. If operating systems are what makes you different, that's what makes your company different, is the operating systems or the hardware you happen to be using, HP, Dell, IBM, whatever, then you need to start infrastructure as a service. Primarily, this is like hosting guys, HPCs, maybe universities, they care about infrastructure as a service. But by and large, most businesses, you don't get differentiated by the hardware you have running in your data center. I'll tell you that right now. A lot of people will get differentiated by platform as a service, by the software they're writing. Anybody in here in shipping and logistics or anything like that, or banking, finance? None of those, really? In Charlotte? A lot of people asleep in here. So Those are the types of people that will benefit from platform as a service. That's your entry point to the cloud. Ignore all this infrastructure as a service crap. Go for platform as a service. That's your entry point to the cloud. That's what makes you different. That's where you should go to get your bang for your buck. But there's a lot of people in here that even the software we use doesn't make us different, right? There's a lot of companies that go around, like my dad's insurance business. Software doesn't really matter to him, right? It's the people that makes him different. It's the customer service reps that make him different. All he needs is Office and some CRM stuff. He doesn't really care where it is. None of it makes him different. And so his entry point is really software as a service. That's his business value and entry point to cloud. So think about your entry point to cloud. Only VMware can offer you all these different entry points. Only VMware can give you the choice between the providers that offer them. So that's why we're here. That's why we're here at the VMware user group. The further you go down, it's going to take you a little bit more work to implement it and consume it, and it's a little bit longer payback, right? Bigger investments typically down here than up here in the stack. So remember, cloud is about I don't care. You have to care, but the users shouldn't have to care. You can also make yourself not have to care by going to software as a service stack or something like that. But the cloud is real. That's the main point. Leverage the power of Spring. Like I said, you have a Java app somewhere in your organization, and Spring will make it easier to use, much more efficient, and allow you to leverage, VMforce or Cloud Foundry or something like that. And then the last thing is take a serious look at Zimbra. If you haven't, I promise you it'll reduce your email expenditure. I promise you it'll make your life easier. I promise you it'll scale better than anything Microsoft has to offer. Absolutely.